How's it going, guys? Welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we are installing the 6-element front mount intercooler on the Elantra N. Now, this install is probably going to be a little bit more difficult / complicated compared to a lot of the other things I've done in the past, but I'm just hoping this video will help you a little bit, maybe guide you along the way if you plan on doing this on your own. Now, of course, you're going to still need the knowledge and the tools in order to be able to do this yourself, but overall, it's still a fairly simple job. Now, to quickly go over the intercooler itself, it is 30% thicker than OEM. It is definitely going to be a little bit heavier, so just consider you're going to be adding a few pounds, but the few pounds is going to be made up for with heat resistance and superior cooling. You're going to get up to 10 wheel horsepower gains just with the stock tune. The entire core has a special thermal paint. No modifications or tune is required with this. This is completely bolt-on. It also comes with high-quality 4-ply silicone couplers and stainless steel T-bolt clamps. One more quick thing I want to mention is while the intercooler itself can give you performance gains, it's primarily meant for cooling, so I'm not going to be doing any test runs in today's video. This is strictly just going to be the install, and then I'll talk about the product probably a little bit afterwards and how difficult or easy it was to install it. So again, without wasting any of your time, let's get right to the install. Starting with the bumper here, you'll have an 8mm bolt up top along with 4 clips on each side. Also to mention, I lifted the car up from the driver's side, and that was more than good enough for the entire installation. Before you take the bumper off completely, there's a couple more clips that you need to remove that are underneath the vehicle. I think there's about 4 or 5 of them, but they're pretty easy to get to. They're right on the front of the vehicle. Just go ahead and take a flathead as the beagles are licking the water that's dripping from the car. God, they're gross. What are you guys doing? What are you doing, Mila? Hi, Mila. Hi, Luna. Hi, girls. Okay. Oh, God. Here we go. Oh. So after I was taking those clips off, I realized I'm going to have to take that skid plate down from underneath the vehicle off completely anyways. So there's not just 4 or 5 clips. There's actually 12 clips and 4 10mm bolts. So I just took that off completely. There was a lot of water under there because I just washed my car yesterday. It's not leaking or anything, but apparently Mila wants to clean it up. Come on. That's dirty. Get. So after you get the bumper removed and the skid plate removed from underneath the vehicle, we're going to have access to the cold side piping. We'll get to the passenger side, which is the hot side here. That's a lot easier, but this one, if you have the DCT transmission, similar to doing the blow-off valve I did in a recent video, you don't have a lot of room here. The transmission takes up a lot of that extra space that you would normally get on the manual transmission, so it's going to be a tight fit getting these clamps off up here. There's going to be a couple caps that you can see right in the center of your screen there that you need to remove with a flathead, and then you'll have access to remove it with another flathead or a 8mm. Now the cold side is definitely a little bit more difficult to get this hose off. It's down underneath the blow-off valve, right there. You can see it right underneath those 2 10mm bolts. It's a lot easier to get to it from the top, so I removed the whole air filter housing to get to it, but from underneath, it's darn near impossible to get, at least with the DCT transmission. I'm not sure for you manual guys, you might be able to get to it without taking this all out and do it from underneath the vehicle. But if you have the DCT, you're definitely going to have to remove that air box to get to this bolt. So I'm probably not going to film this part, but I at least wanted to show you where it's at so you know where to get to it. And then we're going to get this hose off, but the hot side is going to be a lot easier to get to and remove. And moving on to the shroud on the intercooler, you're going to have to remove this hose that's right here. There's a little clip that you'll have to pull out here. And then there's also this hose, which we could just kind of pop out right here. Get that out of the way. And then you're going to have 4 10mm bolts. You're going to have 2 on this side and then 2 on the other side. Now after you get the shroud off, the only thing that's still holding on is this little clip right here. You can just take a pair of like needle nose pliers or whatever and just need to squeeze it and then push it through. So after that shroud's removed, which by the way, we're not gonna be reusing because it does not fit over the 6-element intercooler, we're gonna have 2 more 10mm bolts over here and 2 more over here, and then it'll be off. So we've reached the halfway point and we got everything off of the vehicle. I just want to show you guys a few things. Also talk about all the tools I've used so far and talk about some of the things like the shroud that we're not going to be putting back on. I like to keep all my tools and bolts and everything organized in a way so that way when I put everything back on, it shouldn't be hard to find everything. So let's start with some of the tools I've used so far. Mostly it's just been flatheads. There's some extensions with a 10mm, 8mm ratchet, needle nose pliers, also a small 8mm wrench was handy, getting some of the old hoses off. First, you want to make sure you have your clamps and your bolts for where the fender comes off, where the bumper comes off by the fender. You're going to have 1 bolt and 4 clips for each side. For underneath the vehicle, actually this is for the top of the bumper, you're going to have 6 more clips there. On the bottom where the skid shield came off, you have 12 clips and 4 10mm bolts. These are just the 4 covers that came off of the stock hose clamps right here. You don't need these again, but I just wanted to show you everything that came off the car. You have the stock hoses right here for the charge piping. These are going to have replacements, of course, from 6-element. These are the 4 10mm bolts that we're going to be reusing to put the new intercooler on. And just to show you guys the difference in size, again, 30% increase in size right there with the new intercooler from 6-element. I also took off the air filter housing and box because it was a lot easier to get to the cold side piping with removing the air filter housing. You're going to have 3 10mm bolts and the 2 clips that hold this part on right here. Also moving over here, we have the actual bumper. I do recommend doing this with another person if you can. I was very risky and I was kind of concerned that I might be scratching something. I was very careful and I think everything's fine, but at the same time, just be very cautious if you're doing this by yourself. Maybe put some tape along right here to protect it. Now, this is the skid plate. Again, that was the 12 clips and the 4 10mm bolts. But otherwise, hi Luna. Otherwise, everything else was pretty easy. The whole project was really easy. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and get to starting to put everything back on. But if you guys have any questions about any of this or, the install or removal of everything, feel free to leave a comment below. If I didn't mention already, this is not going to be reused. This is the stock shroud that went over the stock intercooler. And then you have 4 10mm bolts that are not going to be reused. So that's the only thing that's not going to be going back on the vehicle, with the exception to these right here. But overall, it's pretty easy so far. It definitely will take a lot less time if you're not filming like me. Let's get right back to it and start putting the new one on. Also, quickly to add, the bigger clamps that come from 6-element are going to be going on the cold side piping. Then you're going to have a medium and a small one. Those are going to go on the new hot side. The smaller one you'll see on the instructions is going to be the one going more towards the engine, and then the medium sized one will be the one that goes on the actual intercooler. All right guys, when it comes to putting this back on, I actually did weigh this in comparison to the stock one. The stock one was about 8.5 pounds and this one's about 21.5 pounds. So there is, you're looking, what is it, about 13 pounds heavier. So it's not like it's difficult to put on by yourself, but if you have a helping hand, it might make things a little bit easier. So don't always do what I do. So we're gonna go ahead and put a couple of these on by hand here first. All right, after I got them in there a little bit, I'm gonna go ahead and tighten them up a little bit. At least one of them. And then I'm gonna go to the other side. All right, I have the drill on a really low torque setting. I'm gonna grab a ratchet, tighten that down by hand. The other thing that's really important is they mentioned that this bracket needs to have at least a 1/16 of an inch of clearance. Honestly, I think I have like almost a 1/4 of an inch or at least an 1/8 of an inch. So I'm not even gonna bother with that. That should be just fine. Next up, we're going to go ahead and get the hoses on. I'm not sure how much of it I'm going to be able to get on camera for you, but when it comes to putting these new hoses on, one thing that I've seen recommended multiple places is actually using a little bit of hairspray. So big thanks to my fiance for having some of this lying around. You want to spray it on the inside here, so that way it actually is going to not only lubricate it to make it easier to put these on, but it'll actually make it a better seal. So it'll stick on there better, and it'll be a lot less likely to pop off. All right, guys, moving over to the hot side piping. This is the new hose that we're going to be putting on. Also, I want to mention for these clamps, when you put these a certain way, make sure you're putting them somewhere where you can easily get a ratchet to them, so that way you can tighten them down. For this part right here, there's a little bit of an area right here. So I'm going to have this kind of almost the way you see it right now, kind of facing down, so that way I'm going to be able to easily tighten it from under here. This one doesn't matter as much because it's pretty easy to get to on either side, but I'm going to do it more towards the passenger side just because the belt is right up in here and I want to make sure that doesn't touch at all. But first I'm going to spray a little bit of hairspray on each side again, like I had mentioned, so that way we get a little bit more of a bond from the connection from the hose to the actual intercooler and to this pipe as well. And then we're going to go ahead and tighten it up. For these clamps that we're putting on, the new ones from 6 Element, they are a 10 millimeter. Also, you're going to want to use a deep well, because when you tighten these down, there's going to be a screw that's going to be poking through it. And if you have a short well socket, you're not going to be able to get this down all the way. Also, tighten these down like almost all the way if you can, because you do not want these popping off. You're going to have major boost leaks if you do. So tighten them down with I guess with confidence. But just make sure they're not loose, because these are very important to have tight. So again, 10 millimeter, tighten them down, use some hairspray. All right, guys, so we got it all put back together. I didn't want to bore you guys with a lot of putting everything back together the same way we took it all apart. But overall, the install went pretty good. I think it was pretty easy overall, depending on your knowledge and experience with working on cars. It might be a little bit more difficult if you don't wrench all the time on a vehicle itself, but what I can say is more difficult is if you have the DCT transmission like I do. On the cold side hose, it's going to be a lot more difficult to get. It is down there where the blow-off valve is, underneath the blow-off valve to be exact, on that cold side hose. So it wasn't difficult in a sense. It was just because there wasn't a lot of room to work with. The hot side hose was really easy. Taking the bumper off and everything was really easy. I may have mentioned this earlier, but if you have a friend, have someone help you with at least taking the bumper off, putting it back on, for the own protection of your paint, and so you're not scratching anything, as well as the intercooler. Putting it back on, it'd probably be wise to have a second person holding it there for you, so that way you're not scratching anything or dropping it. You don't want to damage this. I mean, obviously it's not a super cheap part or anything. Going to the parts themselves, this is all you should be left with. You should have the original shroud, the intercooler, the old hoses, and then 4 10 millimeter bolts which held up the shroud, and just these little caps that held on or that went over the stock hose clamps. Now, before I finish things off on this video, I do want to remind you guys about the upcoming giveaway. $150 coupon to badgeskins.com, $50 Amazon gift card, and this huge Chemical Guys cleaning kit for the interior and the exterior of your car. So that's going to be coming very soon. I don't know exactly when, but in a future video, we're going to have a way for you guys to enter. And all you have to do is be subscribed and then follow the instructions on that video. So stay tuned for that. But that's all I really got for you guys in today's video. I hope you enjoyed the install. I hope it helps you in case you guys get one of these for your car. If you have any questions, leave a comment below. Leave a like if you enjoyed today's video, and I will see you guys next time. Have a great day.